My name's Jake Parker. I'm 33, and until recently, I thought I had everything I ever wanted. A stable career, a nice house in Austin, and a wife who, to everyone else, was the definition of loyal and loving. Her name was Samantha. Sam, for short. We'd been married for 6 years, met in college, fell hard and fast, and built our lives around each other. If you asked anyone, they'd say we were the couple who made it. But what people didn't see, what I didn't see, was how cracks had already started forming beneath that perfect picture. The beginning of the end. It started small. Missed calls, late nights, excuses that sounded just believable enough not to question. Sam was a marketing consultant. She traveled a lot, client meetings, conferences, strategy sessions in different cities. I never thought twice about it because she was always good about communicating. At least, she used to be. Then around March last year, things changed. The first time I felt something was off, she came home from a work trip in Dallas. Normally, she'd burst through the door, hug me, talk about everything that happened. That night, she was quiet, withdrawn. When I asked how the trip went, she just said, "It was fine, long." I figured she was tired. But over the next few weeks, the distance grew. Emotionally, physically, everything. The red flags. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Work stress, family drama, hormonal shifts, anything but infidelity. But then came the phone habits. She used to leave her phone anywhere, kitchen counter, couch, even the bathroom. Now, it was glued to her hand, screen face down, always on silent. I remember one evening we were watching a movie and her phone buzzed. She flinched, snatched it up, and typed something quickly. "Who's that?" I asked. "Just work," she said without looking up. Work. Always work. The moment that broke me. The real turning point came one night in late April. Sam said she had a late dinner with a client, a tech startup CEO, who wanted to renegotiate a marketing contract. She left at 6:30 p.m., kissed me goodbye, and said she'd be home around 10. 10 came and went, then 11, then midnight. No call, no text. Finally, around 12:45 a.m., she walked in, heels in hand, hair slightly messy, perfume mixed with something unfamiliar. "Hey," I said, trying to sound calm. "You okay?" She froze, surprised I was still awake. "Yeah, sorry, the meeting ran late." "At midnight?" "After dinner drinks. It's how business works, Jake." I studied her face. Her lipstick was smudged, her eyes tired, but guilty. Something in her expression told me the truth I didn't want to admit. I wanted to ask more, to press her, but the words caught in my throat, because part of me still wanted to believe her. The distance between us. The following weeks were tense. Conversations became short, laughter disappeared. She started sleeping on the far edge of the bed, claiming she was too hot or just tired. Meanwhile, I found myself scrolling through her social media like some paranoid stranger, looking for clues, inconsistencies, anything. But she was careful. No tagged photos, no suspicious comments, nothing obvious. Still, I knew. I could feel it. The advice I didn't want to hear. One night, I vented to my best friend Evan. We'd been close since high school. He listened quietly, then said something I didn't want to hear. "Jake, I'm going to say this once. If you think she's cheating, you're probably right." I frowned. "You don't know her." "I know human behavior. You're not crazy for feeling what you feel, but stop waiting for her to confess. If you want the truth, find it yourself." I hated that advice. It made me feel dirty, like I'd become the kind of husband who snoops through his wife's stuff. But that night, lying awake beside a woman who wouldn't even look me in the eye, I realized Evan was right. The discovery. A week later, Sam had another conference trip, this time in Houston. 3 days. She left on a Thursday morning. By noon, I'd made up my mind. If she was lying, I was done pretending. I started by checking our shared laptop, the one she rarely used anymore. Most of her files were clean, but in her browser history, for the first few days after Houston, I did what felt natural, but hollow. I went through the motions.
I made coffee the same way. I walked our dog, Murphy, the exact route I always had. I smiled at neighbors and nodded at coworkers. I wore the same clothes to work, used the same calendar, answered the same emails. On paper, my life looked unchanged. But inside, everything had a kind of white noise, a low hum of betrayal that didn't stop. You learn a lot about someone when you choose to keep quiet. Keeping my composure wasn't strength, it was strategy. I needed time to think. I needed to make decisions that would matter. I'd seen too many stories, real and fictional, where people blew up in fits of rage and left nothing but regret behind. I didn't want that. I wanted to be methodical. I wanted to be effective. So I started a folder, not digital only, physical. Labeled it Documents. In it, I put the screenshots from her Proton mail, the notes I'd taken at the hotel, photos I'd snapped from across the hall. I printed hotel receipts, copied confirmation numbers, and downloaded metadata from the videos I'd taken. I wasn't sure yet what I would do with the pile of paper, but having it there made me feel like I had a backbone again. The first move: control the narrative. If Sam was living a double life, she was careful. She'd never leave obvious traces on social media. That meant if I wanted proof beyond the emails, I had to create opportunities where she'd slip up. Not sabotage, not humiliation. Opportunity. So I started small. I changed our shared calendar to show I had a business trip scheduled for the following Friday. It was a fake trip, nothing booked. But if she wanted to meet Mark, she'd think it was convenient to do it on her way back. I watched her reaction like someone waiting for a kettle to boil. She didn't call me out. She texted, "Have fun, don't forget to bring the camera for Sunday." It was casual, but it told me she assumed I was leaving. That assumption gave her permission to be absent, and it gave me the window I needed. Next, I installed a few non-invasive apps on our home network router. Nothing illegal, just quality of life monitoring. I wanted to know whether she connected to any unknown devices when she was home. If she brought a burner phone into our house, I wanted to know. A week later, on Thursday night, an unfamiliar device pinged the router. I traced the MAC address, cross-referenced it with the models online, and found it matched a mid-tier Android. Not conclusive, but consistent with what I'd seen in the emails. That night, I stayed up on the couch, pretending to sleep. At 11:45 p.m., she came in. She didn't tiptoe. She walked in like someone coming home to a predictable routine. I watched her drop her bag in the guest room closet, not the bedroom, and slip into the bathroom. When she came back, she was carrying a small clutch. No phone in hand, like a thief who doesn't want to be...
Emails. I needed the hotel logs I'd seen in the old receipt. It would be small, but if I could get a name match, a credit card statement, or a valet ticket, I'd have more. We don't always think about how many paper trails we leave. I called the Marlowe, the boutique in Houston where Sam stayed. I pretended to be a friend planning a surprise party and asked about typical check-in out times in late April. The clerk was helpful. He mentioned busy nights and how sometimes people used different names. When I gave him a description, a woman who stayed and left late on a Saturday, he didn't hesitate to say he remembered a couple who'd been particularly discreet. No names, no numbers. It was frustrating, but it also told me something. Hotels, when asked nicely, will often preserve records if you have the right justification. I waited. 2 weeks later, a charge from the Marlowe showed up on our shared credit card. A small minibar charge Sam claimed was for the hotel. The amount was trivial, but the timestamp on the bank app matched within hours of a Proton mail exchange. It was another red thread. I printed it. Marcus helped me pull the EXIF data from the hotel's promotional images Sam had liked on social media. Useless, but neat. And he flagged an oddity. A photograph Sam had posted on a private account she'd forgotten I had access to, old habit, long buried, contained GPS metadata that had been cropped out in the visible image but still present in the file's history. The GPS coordinates roughly matched the hotel block in Houston.
Once you start stacking odds, things stop seeming coincidental. The safety plan. I wasn't without fear. The last thing I wanted was a public spectacle that turned into something worse. For all my careful plotting, Sam had children in her orbit, if not hers, Mark's, and I didn't want to destroy anyone who didn't deserve it. Marcus reminded me that there's a moral line between exposing adultery and trying to ruin lives. My approach, he said, should be surgical. Expose the deceit that impacted my marriage, not inflict collateral damage. So I made 3 rules for myself. Only use evidence that directly pertains to my marriage. Avoid public humiliation of parties not involved with my relationship, kids, employees. Don't be violent. Don't be reckless. I wrote the rules in a notebook and signed them like a contract. It helped. The emotional chessboard. By now, Sam had made a pattern of leaving late a few nights a week. She'd come home smelling different and offhandedly mention client dinners. I began to rearrange the dynamic. I began to be oddly affectionate, not in the shrieking, needy way you imagine in the movies, but in a quiet, calculated warmth. I brought a coffee in the morning, texted her little, non-threatening niceties at work, and acted supportive and loving in public. The logic was simple. Make her feel comfortable enough to be careless. People who are certain they're untouchable are sloppy. People who think no one cares make mistakes. A week and a half after the Houston trip, I sent her a text at 2:03 a.m. It wasn't accusatory. It read, "Can't sleep. You up?" I watched the typing indicator for a long time. It showed up, disappeared, showed again, and then she replied, "Yeah, tossing. Call you tomorrow?" No specifics, no chastisement, no alarm. I resisted the urge to follow her that night. I saved my energy. The breakthrough. The breakthrough came on a random Tuesday. Sam told me she had a late networking dinner, the vague kind people say when they don't want to explain. I pretended to be engrossed in work. At 9:12 p.m., an unfamiliar number texted me. It was a photo. Sam, laughing, in a low-lit room holding a glass of wine. The message read, "Can't wait for Friday." It was a mistake. It landed in my messages because Mark, or whoever was handling logistics, had typed the wrong number into the group thread. Or maybe it was deliberate. Either way, the slip was golden. The timestamp matched something in my Proton Mail archive. The location tag was off, but the pattern, wine, late hour, flirtatious caption, was the same. I didn't reply. I saved it, backed it up, emailed copies to myself in encrypted files, and stored the original in a thumb drive labeled Vault. That slip was the chink in the armor. It meant that despite all the caution, their clandestine world had a weakness: human error. And humans, by nature, make mistakes. Escalation. The phone. I had one more risk left: getting the definitive proof. A recording or a blatant photo of Sam and Mark together in a compromising.
Night Sam was scheduled to be out. I did it under my name, paid with a card the bank only saw as a routine business expense, and arranged to be in the neighboring room. It was adrenaline and cowardice in equal measure. I told myself it was for the truth, for closure, but there was also a selfish part of me that wanted to see, to look into her face and find whatever it was that had led her to choose secrecy over the life we built. I set up the camera and the recorder in a way that would capture sound from the hallway and the door opening. I didn't intend to break any laws. The recorder would pick up voices in the corridor. The hotel room would be a public space of sorts. The only thing I was clear on was this: I would not force entry and I would not trespass. That night I sat with coffee and a book and pretended to be a vacationer. My hands trembled more than I expected. At 11:20 p.m., 2 silhouettes crossed the hallway. The door to 719 clicked, laughter flowed. I tuned the recorder. What I heard was not cinematic. It was a real human exchange. 2 adults flirting, talking about mundane things, then passionate murmurs. It was confirmation and devastation in the same breath. I recorded 5 minutes. It was enough. Aftermath of the night. The next morning, I checked out. I didn't confront them. I didn't call Sam. I drove home, sat in the driveway, and watched Murphy run for the ball. I put the recorder in the vault with the other files and went inside like a man carrying a secret weight. Sam came home that afternoon in a different dress. She kissed me like nothing had happened. I tasted wine on her lips. Her hands smelled like another woman's perfume. I said nothing. She smiled. Sometimes silence is the loudest sound. That night I made my choice. I wasn't going to explode in the parking lot. I would be surgical, precise, and unwavering. The next steps would be difficult. They'd cost me friendships, assumptions, and maybe my reputation. But they would also give me something I hadn't had in months. Control. Because betrayal is messy, and love is not a contract. But the truth, when carefully assembled and presented, can change everything.
You know that eerie quiet before a storm, when the air feels heavy and electric? That's what my house became. Samantha smiled too easily, laughed too brightly, and moved through the rooms like someone performing a version of herself. I mirrored her. I smiled back. I played my part. We were actors sharing a stage neither of us believed in anymore. The truth sat between us, invisible but alive. I had everything I needed: digital proof, physical receipts, and the recording from that night at the hotel. But evidence isn't the same as closure. Proof doesn't heal you. It just clarifies the wound. And what I wanted now wasn't just to catch her. I wanted her to understand the magnitude of what she'd done. So I planned the confrontation like a chess game, step by step, controlled, predictable, but sharp. The setting. It was a Sunday, quiet, overcast, the kind of gray morning that makes people introspective. I suggested we have breakfast together. Pancakes, her favorite. She wore her old college sweatshirt, hair in a bun, barefoot. Normal. Familiar. The image almost made me forget why we were here. Halfway through breakfast, I placed my phone on the table and opened a photo folder titled Houston. She froze mid-bite. On the screen was the hotel lobby camera still, followed by the screenshot of the Proton Mail message, and finally, the recording waveform file labeled audio_719.mp3. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe. Sam, we need to talk. The moment, truth bends. For a few long seconds, she said nothing. Her hand hovered above the table, trembling slightly. Then she leaned back, exhaled, and whispered, "Jake, what is this?" "You tell me. You've got about 30 seconds before I press play." Her lips parted like she wanted to deny it, but her eyes, those gray, tired eyes, already told the story. The defiance flickered, then softened into panic. "I can explain," she said. I smiled faintly. "That's the thing, Sam. I don't want an explanation. I want the truth." She started talking fast, like someone trying to outrun a tidal wave. "It wasn't what you think. It wasn't serious. It just happened. We were drunk. I was lonely. You were always at work, and I felt unseen, neglected. So your solution was what? Find validation in a hotel room 200 miles away?" She flinched. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice trembling. "It wasn't about love. It was escape." Escape from what? Reality? Responsibility? Me? Tears welled up in her eyes. For a moment, I almost felt pity. But pity doesn't erase betrayal. It only adds confusion. She covered her face with her hands. "I ended it," she murmured. "Months ago." I tilted my head. "Then why were you with him 2 weeks ago in Houston?" Her hands fell, color drained from her cheeks. That was the breaking point. The moment she realized how deep I'd gone. The collapse. She tried to deny it, of course. They always do. She insisted it was a coincidence, that Mark had been there for a work conference, that they bumped into each other. But when I showed her the time-stamped email and the bank record from the minibar, Her voice cracked. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. The apology landed like a dull thud. Sorry? That word was too small, too late, too useless. I asked her, "How long?" She hesitated. Then, almost a year. A year. 365 days of deceit. 12 months of lies, delivered with morning kisses and goodnight smiles. I stared at her, studying the face I thought I knew better than my own. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but spiritually. I thought I could control it. I thought it would stay hidden. That sentence hit me harder than anything else. She didn't say she thought it wouldn't happen. She said she thought it would stay hidden. That told me everything I needed to know about her remorse. It wasn't for what she did, it was for being caught. The shift. I didn't shout. I didn't throw things. I just stood up, walked to the window, and stared at the street. The morning light was dull, almost metallic. When I spoke, my voice surprised me with how calm it sounded. "You know, Sam, I used to think honesty was the foundation of love, that if two people just told the truth, they could survive anything. Turns out, honesty only matters if both people value it." She didn't answer. Tears streamed down her face, but I'd gone numb to them. "I'm not going to ruin your life," I said, "but you're going to face what you've done." "What does that mean?" she asked weakly. "It means I'm done covering for you. I'm done pretending. I've already spoken to HR about stepping back from the marketing partnership. Your boss will get a report by tomorrow. Not about the affair, about the financial side of it. The travel expenses tied to those trips." Her eyes widened. "Jake, please, you can't—" "Oh, I can," I said. "You used company money to fund your affair, Sam. That's fraud, not romance." She looked horrified. "You'd destroy my career?" "I'm not destroying it," I said. "You did that yourself. I'm just making sure accountability finds its way home." Fallout. For the next few days, the house was silent again, but this time not peaceful. She tried to talk. I ignored her. She left apology notes on my desk, texts filled with desperation and promises to change, but betrayal doesn't get undone with words. Trust doesn't regenerate on demand. I spent nights at Marcus's place, finalizing files and building a chronological report. Emails, photos, receipts, metadata. It wasn't to shame her publicly. It was to protect myself. I needed a record in case things turned legal or messy. Then, on Thursday, Samantha came to me, holding a letter. "I'm leaving," she said quietly. "I can't stay here anymore." I looked up from my laptop. Good. Tears fell, but I didn't move. She placed the letter on the counter, next to the coffee pot we used to share, and walked toward the door. For a moment I almost said something kind, something human. But she didn't deserve that part of me anymore. When the door closed, it wasn't dramatic. It was final. The kind of silence that feels like a vacuum.
I didn't wake up one day and decide to destroy Samantha or Mark. What I wanted wasn't chaos, it was balance. I wanted to make the universe even again, to restore the equilibrium that their deceit had shattered. I wanted truth to hurt them in the same quiet, methodical way they'd hurt me. But revenge has its own gravity. Once you start, it pulls you in. The morning after the anonymous photo arrived, I sat in my office, staring at the wall. The hum of the computer fan, the faint buzz of a streetlight outside, everything sounded like background noise to a movie I didn't want to be in. Then I opened my laptop and began to write.
Not a confession, not a threat. A plan. Step 1. Identifying the weak links. Every affair has weak points. Lies depend on secrecy, and secrecy depends on coordination. Phones, messages, shared accounts, private meetups. If I could expose even one of those, the whole structure would collapse. Marcus helped me map the digital pattern. Mark's work email domains, business accounts, shared locations, and the metadata trails that linked his company phone to several of the Proton Mail timestamps. Mark had been careless. He used the same IP addresses from his office to contact Samantha during work hours. Meaning, the affair wasn't just personal, it was happening on corporate time. And that opened a door I could use. Marcus warned me. If you push this too far, you're risking legal gray zones. I nodded. I'm not hacking anyone. I'm just letting light in. He smiled faintly. Light can burn. Step 2. The anonymous drop. Every big exposure needs the right audience. I wasn't going to leak their affair to tabloids or Reddit. That wasn't my style. I wanted it to sting where it mattered, their professional lives. So I created an anonymous account on a secure submission portal used by Mark's company's compliance department. The message was concise. Attached are documents linking your Director of Sales, Mark Daniels, to fraudulent billing of travel expenses and misuse of corporate funds for non-work-related trips. Please verify the attached receipts against internal expense reports for Houston and Dallas between April and June. I attached redacted copies of the hotel invoices, credit card transactions, and screenshots, never mentioning Samantha by name. It didn't have to. The docs connected themselves. Then I hit send. I sat back in the chair, staring at the message sent confirmation like it was a detonator button. That single click would start a chain reaction I couldn't reverse. Step 3. The psychological game. While the corporate fallout brewed behind the scenes, I went after something more personal. Control over the narrative. People like Mark thrive on manipulation. They spin stories where they're the victims, painting themselves as misunderstood heroes. I wasn't about to let that happen. So I crafted a new story, one that spread without my name attached. I started posting anonymously on a local forum under a relationship advice thread titled, "Found out my coworker was sleeping with a married woman. Should I tell her husband?" The story was vague, but specific enough to fit their situation. It described a marketing manager, Mark, and a woman from another firm, unnamed, who used company trips for their affair. The post went viral in local circles. Speculation ran wild. Within 2 days, Mark's department was buzzing. Gossip spreads faster than truth. And I used that current to carry my message. By the end of the week, Mark's reputation was fractured. His wife, yes, he had one, reportedly filed for separation. That part I hadn't even planned. Sometimes truth ricochets. Step 5. Samantha's fall. Meanwhile, Samantha's company finished their internal audit. The results weren't surprising. Irregular travel expenses, false billing claims, and inconsistent reporting. She was asked to resign quietly for professional misconduct. No calls, no messages, no updates. Just this eerie, hollow quiet that filled my apartment like a fog that refused to lift. I thought revenge would feel satisfying. I thought it would bring closure, that I'd finally breathe again once Samantha and Mark got what they deserved. But peace doesn't come after revenge. It just hides behind it. And that night, I realized I wasn't done yet. Not because I wanted to hurt anyone anymore, but because someone was still pulling strings. 1. The return of the anonymous voice. It was almost midnight when my phone buzzed, a new Proton Mail alert. My stomach dropped before I even opened it. The message read, "You thought it was about cheating. It never was. Meet me at the pier tomorrow at 9 p.m. come alone. Attached was a photo, an image of me and Marcus talking outside his apartment from 2 weeks earlier. Someone had been watching us. The pier was an abandoned dock near the river, quiet, isolated, no cameras. It was the perfect place to vanish. I should have ignored it. I should have deleted the message, called the police, maybe even left town. But that's not who I was anymore. I needed the truth, even if it killed me. 2. The meeting at the pier. The next evening, the air was cold, the river fog thick enough to blur the city lights into ghostly halos. I parked a few blocks away and walked to the dock. My footsteps echoed off the wet planks. At first, I thought I was alone. Then I saw a shadow leaning against one of the posts. A man, smoking, his face barely visible beneath a hood. "Jake," he said quietly, his voice distorted but familiar. It was Marcus. I froze. "You sent the message?" He shook his head. "No, I got one too." He pulled out his phone. Same email, same photo. Before I could react, a black SUV rolled up at the end of the dock. 2 men stepped out, dressed in dark suits. They weren't cops. One of them spoke calmly. "Jake Taylor, Marcus Reed. You've been causing a lot of noise." "Who the hell are you?" I demanded. The man smiled faintly. "Think of us as cleanup." Then he tossed a manila envelope at my feet. Inside were printed screenshots, the compliance emails, my anonymous posts, the whistleblower note I sent to the journalist. Every single move I'd made. "Your little digital crusade crossed into corporate espionage. You leaked internal data. That's a felony." I looked at Marcus. He was pale. "This is insane," I said. "I didn't hack anything. I exposed fraud." The man nodded slowly. "And now, you're a liability." Before I could speak, Marcus stepped back. "I told you we should have stopped," he said quietly. Something about his tone twisted in my chest. You told them?" I whispered. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "They came to me first. They had everything. My family, my accounts, my credentials. I had to cooperate." "Cooperate?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "You sold me out." He looked broken. "They said they'd only go after you if I didn't help." The suited man smiled coldly. "You see, betrayal has layers." It hit me, all of it. The anonymous messages, the deleted backups, the leaked chats, it wasn't random. Marcus had been feeding them information the whole time. The irony was sickening. The man who'd helped me expose betrayal betrayed me, too. 4. The counterattack. But they underestimated one thing. I'd prepared for this. I said, my voice calm now. "You really think I didn't see this coming? You think I didn't have a fail-safe?" The man frowned. "What are you talking about?" I sent another copy of the files, unedited, encrypted, to a journalist's dead drop server. It's scheduled to auto-publish in 12 hours unless I stop it. The man's smile faltered. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I asked, stepping closer. "Because if I disappear, every single email, photo, and financial record goes public, including your company's off-book accounts." A tense silence hung in the air. Finally, the man exhaled and gestured to Marcus. "Get him out of here." Then they turned, walking back toward the SUV. Marcus stared at me, guilt burning in his eyes. "I didn't want it to end like this." "It already did," I said. They drove off, leaving me alone on the dock. The sound of the water slapping against the wood like a slow heartbeat. The next morning, I packed a bag and left the city. I didn't stop to tell anyone where I was going. 3 days later, an article dropped on a major investigative site. Headline: "Whistleblower exposes corporate cover-up, affair, and fraud at Westbridge Marketing." My name wasn't mentioned,
But the story had everything. Every detail, every lie. Mark was fired. Samantha's resignation went public. The company's legal department faced federal investigation. Marcus disappeared. No one ever saw him again. And me? I moved to a small coastal town where no one knew my name. Sometimes I walk the shoreline at night and think about all of it. Love, betrayal, revenge. How one secret started a chain reaction that burned through everyone involved. Was it worth it? Did justice ever really come? Maybe. But the truth is, revenge doesn't close the wound. It just cauterizes it. It stops the bleeding, but the scar never fades. The final message. One morning, months later, I got a single email from an unknown address. Balance restored. You played your part well. No signature, no trace. Just a blank message that felt like both a warning and a goodbye. I deleted it and walked outside watching the waves crash against the rocks. And for the first time in years, I let myself smile. Not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped fighting. Because sometimes peace isn't justice. It's just the absence of war.